Have you felt it? You know, that kind of nagging sense that the world is spinning just a little faster, maybe a little crazier than it used to? Well, you are definitely not alone. So many of us are asking these huge questions about where we're all headed. In this explainer, we're going to dive into some ancient prophecies that, according to some thinkers, speak directly to our modern anxieties. Author Max Lucado really just nails it, doesn't he? He calls this a pandemic of anxiety. It's that shared global feeling, right? That low-grade hum of chaos in the background that has so many of us wondering, hey, are we living through some uniquely significant times? And that, of course, leads to the big one, the question that's been asked for centuries, but feels especially urgent right now. Are we living in the end times? I know, it's a heavy topic, it can be pretty intimidating, but the sources we're digging into here suggest it's a question we actually shouldn't be afraid to ask. Now, here's what's really interesting. According to the thinkers we're exploring, the goal isn't just about, predicting the future with a crystal ball. They believe these prophecies, especially from the Book of Revelation, actually hold an urgent message for how we're supposed to live right now, today. All right, so let's start right there with that message for today. Theologian John Bevere argues that those letters to the 7 churches in Revelation, they are so much more than just some historical mail. So Beaver talks about this idea called the universal view. The perspective here is that each of those 7 churches isn't just a snapshot in time, but a timeless spiritual archetype. Basically, any church, in any era, including ours, can see itself reflected in one of these 7 portraits, with all their unique strengths and, their weaknesses too. As Bevere puts it, the message just transcends its original time and place. It's seen as living and active, speaking directly to believers today. So the big takeaway is that the warnings and the encouragements meant for those ancient churches are considered just as relevant now as they were 2,000 years ago. And this really highlights a core tension described in the text. On one hand, you've got the persecuted church, often in places of real hardship. Bevere notes this church is typically on fire. Its faith is tested. It's growing. But then, on the other hand, you have the comfortable church, often in prosperous nations, which is warned against becoming lukewarm, complacent, distracted by its own success and comfort. Okay, let's zoom out from the message for today and take a look at the bigger picture. Author Max Lucado provides a framework for understanding what many believe is the prophetic timeline for what happens next. So this timeline, it kind of organizes the major phases, starting with what's called the church age. That's the era we're in right now. That's followed by the rapture, then a 7-year period called the tribulation, then the millennium, and finally, the final judgment. So let's break down a couple of these key moments. First up, the rapture. The term actually comes from a Greek word harpazo, which means a sudden snatching. But Lucado frames this not as something to be afraid of, but as an act of loving rescue. It's like a father seeing trouble coming down the road and quickly gathering his children to safety before the storm really hits. Now, following the rapture, the timeline enters what's known as the tribulation. This is described as a 7-year period of just intense turmoil on earth, a time of global crisis so bad that Jesus himself is quoted as saying, "It will be unlike any trouble the world has ever known or ever will know again." And during this period of chaos, a central figure is said to emerge, which, of course, raises a question that has fascinated and, let's be honest, freaked people out for generations. Who is the Antichrist? Well, according to these sources, this figure, who's also called the Man of Evil, he won't show up looking like an obvious villain. No, he's described as this incredibly charismatic global leader who rises to power by promising peace. He even brokers a 7-year peace treaty, but then, right in the middle, he breaks it, reveals his true nature, and demands that the entire world worship him as God. But after all that darkness of the tribulation, the timeline points to the dawn of something called the millennium. And this is presented as the ultimate answer to humanity's deep longing for a better world. It's described as a literal 1,000-year period of perfect justice and peace on a totally restored earth. So how do we bring these two big threads together? You've got the message for today and the timeline for tomorrow. Well, it all seems to come down to one single thing: hope. Max Lucado just captures the whole essence of this hope in a simple but incredibly profound promise. For anyone who's just weary of a broken world, of injustice and despair, the final message is this: a day is coming when things will be made right again. So this leaves us with two really powerful, interwoven takeaways. First, there's a call to present vitality. That's the challenge to stay spiritually awake and intentional right now. And second, there's a call to future hope, an assurance that no matter how chaotic the world seems, the future can be faced with faith, not fear, because the story ends with restoration. And that really just leaves us with a final thought to chew on. For those who believe, this isn't some dusty history lesson. It's a living story that offers both a warning and a deep comfort, challenging us all to consider how might these ancient words shape our view of the world, our place in it, and what happens next.